Hello everyone. In this video we're going to learn about JavaScript for beginners. So I've been getting a lot of requests about making a course for JavaScript for beginners, and I thought of doing that kind of a crash course, and probably later on we can cover more advanced stuff, but I really wanted to start from the scratch, from the very basics. Okay, so let's begin. So let's understand what is JavaScript. Well, JavaScript is a scripting or programming language that allows you to implement complex features on web pages. Let's say every time a web page does more than just sit there and display static information for you to look at. Well, let's say displaying timely content updates, interactive maps, animated 2Ds or 3D graphics, or scrolling video jukeboxes. You can probably guess that it's using JavaScript that helps you interact with the pages, making the web page more interactive. Okay, so JavaScript can be used for dynamically updating the content, controlling multimedia, animate images. So there's a lot of things that you can do with JavaScript. It's one of the most popular languages in programming. We have different layers of the standard web technology, and then in the layer cake of standard web technology, well, JavaScript is the third layer. So you have HTML, CSS, and you have the JavaScript as well. So let's take a common example. Let's say that we have a p tag in HTML, and it just says player 1 and Chris. Okay, so currently it just displays like that. Let's say we add some style to it. So I've just written some style. I'm just going to uncomment that. Oops. Yeah. So you've got that style, and let's refresh. And now you can see we've added the style. So earlier it was a layer of HTML. We added the layer of CSS, and now we're going to add some JavaScript. So there's a script tag, and I've written some JavaScript inside of it. You don't have to worry about what this code does. We're not going to get into explaining this, but just to tell you that it would make this interactive. So basically, if I now refresh, if I click on it, it takes my name, so I can put my name over here, and now you can see it replaces the content. And this is what we spoke about, right? That it dynamically changes the content. It can update the content dynamically. And that's what it did, right? So there are more things that you can do to make your page more interactive. But yes, HTML and CSS need to be loaded first before the JavaScript, because we are targeting those HTML elements with the JavaScript. So those need to be loaded first. Okay. Now let's talk about what happens when you run JavaScript code in a web browser. Well, when you load a web page in your browser, you are actually running your code, for example, the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, right? And that is being run inside of an execution environment, which is the browser tab. Okay. Now this is like a factory that takes the raw material, which is your code basically, okay, and it outputs a product, okay, which is the web page. Okay, so this is your browser tab, and this is kind of a factory. It takes your code and it outputs your product, which is the web page. Okay, now JavaScript is executed by the browser's JavaScript engine. So different browsers have different JavaScript engines. So for example, so let's say Google. Now Google has developed the V8 JavaScript engine, which is one of the most popular ones that is being used. Mozilla has SpiderMonkey. Then your Safari has JavaScript code, Internet Explorer has Chakra, and then there are others as well. So there are a lot of JavaScript engines available depending on which browser you're using. And what is basically the JavaScript engine? It is basically a program that executes the JavaScript code. Okay, great. Now I'm not going to get into the detail of explaining what it is and how things work. That would come in the advanced course that I'll be doing later, where I will explain to you how these things work behind the scenes, how the code is converted, your code is converted into machine code, and different interpreters, just-in-time compilation. All of that information, I'll be giving that in that advanced course. But right now, our main focus is to learn just the basics. So let's continue with that. So next thing comes the variables. Okay, so what are these variables? Well, variable is a container for a value. Now, this value can be a number, which we might use in a sum or a string or as a part of a sentence. Okay, so let me show you an example. You can write it in console over here. So all you have to do is just inspect element and then go into console and you can write it here. So let's get rid of this. Let me just increase the font size. Okay, so you can define a variable using var, and then I can just give it a name. So the first thing you need to do is you need to declare the variable. Okay, so declare variable, you add a keyword called var, and then you put the name of the variable. I can choose whatever name I want. I can put names, I can put age, whatever I want to. So let's say I want to put it for name, and so this is how you declare it. And then you need to initialize it. So I can just say name is equal to Susan, and you can see this is the value of Susan that is printing, right? Okay, and now you can also declare as well as initialize in the same line. So if you want, you can say variable name is equal to Susan. Okay, and now if you print name, you can see it's Imran. So what just happened over here? If you realize the variable name, the value of this was Susan earlier, but later on we actually redeclared it, and we set the name as Imran. Okay. So what you can do is you can change the name of the variable. So variable is basically a container for a value, and this value can be changed. So let me just get rid of this. So I can just say name is equal to Smith, and you can see the value of name is Smith now. So it can be changed, right? Awesome. Now, back when the JavaScript was first created, there was only var, and this works basically fine in most cases, but it had some issues in the way it works, and its design can sometimes be confusing or downright annoying. So then something came out called let. Okay, so let is one of them, came out in the modern versions of JavaScript. So instead of saying var, you can say let, and then I can say name, and then I can say Imran, and you can see if I put name, that's how it's done, right? Okay, so variables aren't the value themselves, they are just containers for the value. So if I have to show you, I'll say name is Bob. Oops, name's already taken. So did you notice what happened? Because we already used name, we got an error. So you can't use the same variable name again. You can change the value, of course, but you can't use the same name again. If I try to redeclare the name, it's giving me an error. But when I was using var, I could redeclare it earlier. So let's say it's var, and I will say age 12. I can put a number there, and if I say var age is equal to 13, so I can actually redeclare, right? But if I'm using let, it won't allow me. So let's say let, and I would say color red, and again if I try to redeclare it, it will throw an error. You can see it's already declared. So this is good, right? Because if I'm using var, then I might change its value later on, and I might not realize when I'm writing a long piece of code. Let's say there is 1,000 line of code, and I have to really go and check as to where I declare. So it's very difficult to keep a track of it. So using let solve that problem. But again, I will get into the detail of it when I'm doing the advanced course, but just to tell you that this is something that's possible. Okay, coming back, I'm just going to refresh the page, and I'm just going to go in for an example. So let's say let name is Bob, and let is male. So you can use Boolean values. So let's say true. And what's the third one? 35. Okay. Let age is equal to 35. Okay, so let's take these examples. So variables basically are containers. So think of this as name is a variable container and its value is Bob. Similarly, for Ismail is another variable which is a container, okay, and its value is true. And then you have the age, which is another variable, and it's a container, and its value is 35. Okay, brilliant. Now there's also something called constants. Now there will be times when you have to use constant. Now what are constants? So constant is basically a value that once declared cannot be changed. So let me show an example. Let me refresh this. Okay, and I will say const. Let's say gender. I'm sure it's not going to change its gender every now and then. So let's say gender is male. And now see what happens if I try to change its value. Assignment to constant variable, right? So it's not possible. You can't change it. So using constant really helps in security. For example, if a third-party script changed such values, it could cause problems to debug, and also for code comprehension, it's harder to accidentally change values and shouldn't be changed and mess things up. So in early days, constant didn't really existed, but in modern JavaScript, we have the keyword constant. Okay, so we can use that. Well, the next thing we're going to come on to are data types. Okay, so let me show you how you can write JavaScript in your file. So let's say this is my index.html. Now there are different ways of writing JavaScript. First is just before your body ends, you can put script over here, and then you can write your JavaScript here. Let's say variable name is equal to Imran, and that's it. And if you now go on to here, refresh, of course you won't see anything unless you can do a console log. So if you do console.log, name is going to print that information in the console. So if you do inspect element console, you can see Imran is being printed over here, right? Awesome. So you can write it here like this, or you can put that into an entirely separate file like I have created like this. So let me just show that to you from scratch. So I can create a file called javascript.js. Okay, and then all I have to do is just include this file here. This is really helpful because rather than making your index.html big, you can just keep all of your JavaScript related code in one file and just include it like this. Okay, so I'm going to put all of the JavaScript code here. Now you can write your JavaScript at this point. Okay, so let's say variable name is equal to Imran, and console, you can also do console1. So when you do console1, instead of coming it in the console, it will come into the warning tab. Okay, so if I say name, if you refresh, there you go, now it's there in the warning. So just something that I like to do. Okay, so ignore this body that's coming, it's coming from the content script, just ignore that part. Okay, awesome. Now let's make it a practice of not using var from now on, because as we just discussed, var has its own disadvantages. You can accidentally change, in fact you can accidentally redefine the variable. Okay, redeclare the variable. Okay, so let's start using let and const from now on. Now we're going to discuss our data types. Okay, so what are data types? Now data types are basically types of data in JavaScript, and there are six primitive data types according to ES6. Okay, ES6 is basically the ECMAScript. Okay, which I will explain to you later, but let's focus on this one. Okay, so the first one is Boolean. Okay, so when you say Boolean, Boolean means either true or false. Okay, so let's say we can write let is male is equal to true, and is male, so if I print it I get true, so either true or false. Okay, so that's Boolean. And the next one is, so in JavaScript you can write comments like this, like double slash, and then whatever you write goes as a comment. Next one is string. Okay, so string are basically your texts. So when we wrote let name is equal to Imran. So this is basically my string, so you can use strings. So this is another data type, which is string. And there is a method called typeof in JavaScript. If you use that method and if you write the name of the variable next to it and hit enter, it will actually tell you the type of the variable. Okay, right, so let's check. The type of is male. I'm hoping we still have it in the memory. Brilliant. You can see it's Boolean, right? So we got that. And then next one is number. Third one is number. So for number, again, you can say let age is equal to 12. So 12 is a number. If you check type of age, you can see it's a number. Brilliant. Then the next one is null, which has no value. So if you declare a variable and assign it to null, example variable x is equal to null, this means var is assigned but has no value. So let me give you an example. So let's say we write let x is equal to null. So what does this mean? This means that the variable x is assigned but it has no value. That's why it is called null. Okay. And then there is something called undefined. Undefined. Okay. Now if we declare a variable but don't assign any value to it, or we don't declare a variable, then it is undefined. So for example, I say let name and I don't go ahead and assign any value to it. Okay. If I check type of name, undefined, right? So which means that I have declared the variable but I'm not given it any value. That's why it will be undefined. Okay, the next one, symbols. So symbols are unique unchangeable values and used for naming custom properties to avoid it being overwritten by another developer. I'm going to go ahead and share an example of symbol in a while, but let's get into the detail of these values, these data types that we are discussing first. Okay. Now besides these primitive data types, there's also something called objects. There's another data type called objects, okay, which we'll discuss in some time, and they are basically the collection of properties. Now there's one way to remember all of this. I generally use this symbol called B U. You can also write comment like this. Okay, so N N S. So I can say Boolean, undefined, number, null, string, and there's one more, symbol. So that's an easy way to remember buns. Okay. All right. So we already discussed the Boolean. That's pretty easy, right? And what we're going to do is we'll discuss the strings now, which is this. Okay. So let's discuss the strings. So there are different methods that are available in JavaScript for strings. Okay. And strings are basically data types that allow you to store a text that should preferably be written in quotes. Now you can use single quote or you can use double quotes as well. It will not accept the data if you don't put the text in quotes. So let me show you an example. So let's say let title is equal to Imran. Okay. Let's just console1 title. Okay, and I'm going to go over here, just refresh the page, and you can see this says Imran. If I don't use quote, it's not going to accept. Let's see what happens. There you go. Imran is not defined, right? So you need to put quotes in order for that to work as the string. Okay, so you can also use double quotes as well. That would also do. Okay. Now, there are different methods that are available for string as we discussed. Okay, before we jump onto that, I will also want to talk about something called concatenation. Okay, so let's say if I want to join two strings together. So let's say we name this as first name. Now in JavaScript, it is advisable that when you are joining two words, if you want to write two words together, then the starting letter should be small, which is F, and then for name, the first letter needs to be capital, and that's called camel casing. So in camel casing, you have your first letter that starts with small letter, and then whenever you want to separate them with name with different words, you can write it like this. Okay, so let me give you another example, like I. So first it will be always small. Have been, so been again, B capital. Coding this. So now you get it, right? So it's camel casing, starting with the small, and then whenever you want to separate the words, just start with the capital like this, but don't start the first one, first letter with as capital. All right, so let first name is Imran, and then you can also say let last name is Sayed. Okay, and then if I want to join these two and print it, I can say let full name, again full name will be first name plus last name. Okay, and then I can just print the full name. Okay, so let's see what we get. Refresh, there you go, you can see. Now of course it doesn't look good because there's no space in between, so what you can also do is the plus sign that you see. So what you can join two strings together, you can join these two variables. Okay, you can actually put quotes and put a space in that, and again use a plus sign. So I'm going to take this, which is Imran, okay, Imran, and then put a space, and then it goes ahead and puts the second one, which is Sayed. So you get a space and then you get the last name. Okay, you get it. So you see now you've got it brilliant going. Awesome. So that's how you concatenate. Now there are different ways to do it. In ES6 you use the backtick with a $sign to concatenate, but when we are doing the ES6 tutorial we will do that. But just to show you the basics, this is how it originally started, that you can use the plus sign to join two strings together. Okay. Awesome. Now next up is there are some methods available in JavaScript that you can use. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. But just before I go on to that, let me show you that you can actually write like this also, like comma, and then put the last name. Okay, so you can put them in the same line, but I prefer to put them in the next line. So this is basically in the same line of statement. You have first name, and then you don't end the statement, you have the last name, and then like this. So if both are going to be let, you can write like this as well. Okay. Let's get rid of this. So there are different string methods that are available. So let's say we have title, and then title says Imran. Okay, and then let's say if I want to get the first letter from this, how do I get that? Well, we can say let first letter. In fact, we can use const because this is not going to change. If this is not going to change, we can use const. Okay, so const first letter is equal to. Now what you'll do is there is a method available, so you can put title dot and the name of the method, which is char at. Okay, and then which position do you want? You want the first one, the second one? I want the first position. The first position will be 0th. Okay, so let's do that. And let's do console1, and I'm going to get the value of the first letter. So let's see what we get. Refresh. There you go. So you've got I over here, right? If I want the next letter, let's say I want the third one. So what do you think would that be? You tell me. So yep, you're right. 0, 1, 2. So I want M. So I'll put 2 over here, and there you go. You get the R. Awesome. Great. So there's also another method called slice method. Okay, so I can do title dot slice. Okay, and if I slice it, so slice is going to return anything on and after that letter. So 0, 1. 1 means this, M, right? So it's going to return this. Okay, IMRN. Now let's go over here. Refresh, and there you go. You have MRAN from here. So this could be useful. Let's say, I have this available as imranhsayed, and if I want to just get the last name from this string, I can do that. I can say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So empty space will also be counted, and 6. So let's try that. There you go. I have the last name. So there will be situations like this in future where you would want a part of the string, so you can get that using the slice method. Okay, so there are other methods available as well, but I'm not going to get into too much of detail of that. There is concat, there is trim, but you can get all of that information. Okay, so I'm going to jump on to numbers now. In numbers, you already discussed that. Let's say we put age is equal to 12. So this is your number data type, right? So there could be some times where you get the values in form of a string and you want to convert into a number or an integer, right? So how do we do that? Well, let's say, but this time instead of a number, it's going to be a string. Remember, we discussed that if we wrap the text with quotes, it becomes a string data type, right? So if I want to convert this into an integer, how do we do that? So there is a method available. So let's say const, say age in, number. Okay, there's a method available called parseInt. Okay, and then it takes your string first. So I'm going to put the string. Okay, and then it takes a second parameter as another number, which is 10. Okay, so we should always pass 10 as a second parameter to tell the system that we are dealing with decimal base numbers. If we don't pass the 10, then you would get unexpected results. Okay, so now if I go ahead and console age in number, let's see what we get. There you go. And how do we know it's actually a number? Well, not just by the color, but you can always confirm like this. You can check type of age number, and there you go, it's a number, right? If you don't convert, and if I just try to check the type of age, what do you expect to get? Well, yes, you get string. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. This shouldn't be confusing, or I can just comment out for reference. Awesome. Now there are other methods available for numbers as well. For example, you have a float available. Okay, so parse float. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this out for now. I would say height. Okay, and if I write 1.33, okay, and then let's go ahead and say float value. And if I use parse float, it's going to convert this into a float number, which is a number with a decimal, right? So we use parse float when we are dealing with decimals, and when we use the parseInt when we're just dealing with just numbers. Okay, so if I now go ahead and check console.log float value, just go ahead and refresh. There you go. Awesome. You can also convert a number into a string. So let's say you have const a is equal to 3, and you want to convert this into a string. So you can say const a into string is equal to, then you can say a dot to string, and then if you print a into string, you can see that is just you've got 3 printed, but with quotes. So you can always check the type of a into string, and you get a string. Awesome. There are some methods available for numbers as well. So let's say if I say my number is equal to 5.3333. So there will be a situation wherein you would want only up to 2 places of decimals. So how do we do that? Well, we can say my number dot, let's store it in a variable, new number. So we can say let new or updated value and we can say my number dot to fixed, and then we want up to 2 places of decimal, so it takes a parameter which is 2 number. You can put 3 also if you want up to 3 places of decimal, but we just want 2, so that's fine. And now if we print the updated value, you can see now it's giving us only numbers up to 2 places of decimal, which is brilliant. But if you notice, the type has changed. So if I check the type of updated value, you can see that it's become string now. So that won't help if we wanted a number format only. So that's not a problem. We already have the updated value. So we can say updated value is equal to, we'll take the current updated value and we'll say dot. In fact, the function for that, we'll say parse float, and then we have to put this value variable, okay, and there you go, it's converted into 5.3. So now if I check updated value, it's been updated to 5.33. Okay, awesome. So that's how you deal with that. And then again, if you want to convert it into 2 strings, you can just do update value to string, and I'll convert it again back into string. So these are the things that you would definitely require in real world scenarios into your projects very often. These are some of the very commonly used methods when it comes to for numbers or strings, etc. Okay, awesome. Now there would be some methods that you would require for the math as well. So let's say refresh, we'll say let pi, so we can get the value of pi. So there is an object available called math. So before even I type this, let me show you that. If I see a math, you can see this is an object. So an object would have curly braces and will have a key and properties, which I will show in some time. But you can see this got different methods available that you can use. I'm looking forward for the value of pi. So for that, all I can do is just say math dot pi, and there you go, I can get the value of pi, right? You can also have other methods like square root. So if I want to say math dot sqrt, and if I want to get a square root of, let's say, 4, what do you expect? Well, certainly you would expect 2, right? Awesome. You can also get for example, if you want 2 multiplied by 2, you can get that as well. So how do we do that? Let me just clear it. So we can say math dot power, so there's a power method, 2 to the power 2. So we'll get 4. Awesome. So you can see how simple and easy it is. There'll be at times when you want to round the numbers, okay? So when dealing with numbers, so let's say if you want to round the numbers, so I can say let, and then I'll say my number is equal to 3.83. So if we want to round it to 4, how do we do that? We can say math dot round. So there is a round method available, and you can just say my number and then just hit it. You can see you got 4, right? Awesome. There are other methods available as well. You can check it out. You can always print this like this, and you can see what are the different methods that are available. You can get all of that and you can use them. Okay, awesome, great. So we're done with the numbers. We've already discussed the null, undefined. We can get in detail about symbols later on, but for now I think one of the most important ones are objects. Okay, so what are objects? Well, objects are basically a collection of properties and methods. So you can think of it, for example, a car. Okay, so a car has different kind of properties. Let's say it has a color, a specific color, so, and then it can have a different model or make or price. Then there could be some functions of what it does. For example, it runs really fast at so and so kilometer per hour speed or miles per hour speed. Okay, so one particular thing has got different properties and methods, and you can collectively have that and create an object. Okay, so let me show you how to create one. So let's say we have a student. Okay, so I'm going to create an object, let student, and then you put an equal sign. In order for you to create an object, all you do is just put an opening curly brace and closing curly brace, and inside of this you will write your properties and methods. So to write the property or method, you need to put the name of the property. So let's say I will put name of the student. Okay, and we'll put Chris. So you put the name, this becomes the name, and then colon and whatever the value you want to assign it to. So this is Chris. Okay, and then we can have age. Okay, let's say 21. Okay, you can have numbers, so the properties can have any data type values, maybe object or a number. You can have string, etc. Okay, so an object property can also have another object assigned to it. So you can have multiple. So let's say you will have gender, and then I can put male over here. Okay, so let's continue with this for now. If I'm going to console log on student, let's see what we get. I'm going to comment out all of this. For now we don't need it, or let's just get rid of this. Let me get rid of this as well. Now if I go back and if I refresh, there you go. So you can see you've got name, Chris, age, gender. So you've got the object, you have the key value pairs, and you have got all of these properties. Now how do I access these properties? So let's say if I want to console log the name of a particular student. Okay, so if first of all, if I put student over here, you can see that you've got all of the details of the student in form of an object. If you check the type of it, type of student, you can see it's an object. If I want to access the name of the student, all I have to do is just say student.name, and you can see it says Chris. If I want the age, all I have to do is just say student.age. So object name and dot the property name will give me access to its property. Okay, so it's 21. If I want the gender, yep, you've guessed it right, student.gender. So with the help of the dot, you can actually access this properties, and if you put the object name and the property name, so if I had to just tell you how it is, so yeah, it'll be like object name dot property name. Okay, this is a syntax basically. So our object name is student and our property name is name. Okay, that's how you put it. Great. Now similarly, you can also have different methods available. So methods are nothing but functions. Okay, so you can use function to perform some operations. Okay, so functions are also objects which you can use to perform different operations. For example, so what we can do is we can create a method over here. We can say give attendance. Okay, and then all I have to do is just write a function. Okay, so you put the keyword function, and then it can accept parameters, but in our case, let's say it doesn't. For now, let's just do an alert present. And remember what we learned, that we can concatenate string. So Chris, so name plus is present, or I can just say I am, and then name variable, and then I'm present. Whatever, I mean, you can put whatever you want. So how do I access this method? How do I call this method? Basically, same thing goes, property name, and then the object name and then the property name. So in our case, this is the method, so we'll just say student.giveAttendance. Okay, like this you will call. So if I want to just show you over here, you can see it's called. That's why you got the alert. Let's do that here. The student, you can see that this is the function, this is the method, and it tells you that what it does. And if I want to call it, all I have to do is just say student dot give attendance, and then you put this round brackets, hit it, and there you go. I'm Imran, I'm present, right? Awesome, great. So this is how you have the properties and methods of a function of an object. Okay, brilliant. Now there is another way to create the object. So let's say I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this student. If you want to create an object, you can also say let student is equal to new. So you can use new keyword, and then you can use object, and then that's how you can create it. Okay, so it talks about it can be simplified, but let's leave that for now. It's just saying that you could have created that with the way we've just created, but this is fine. This is also how you can create it. In fact, let's do this here on the console. Okay, let's refresh it, hit it. Okay, it's already been declared because you have to comment out this. Great, so let's do that. And now I can say student.name. So I can assign, once you've initialized it like this, once you've instantiated it like this, then you can actually assign the property names after you've actually created that object. So you can say student.name is Imran, student.age is 24, and now if you print student, you can see now it has name, it's got age as well, and you can modify these values as well. So you can just say student.name, and now it could be Sam. Oops, it has to be equal, not. There you go. And now if you check student, you can see now the name is changed. So you can actually modify values like that as well, and this is going to be pretty useful in your day-to-day scenarios when you're working on different projects. Okay, so I thought I should bring that to your notice. Okay, now this is something that you can use to create an object. However, there would be scenarios where we want to create multiple objects which have the same properties. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, we can do that using constructors, okay, so that we can reuse them. All right, so a constructor function is basically a function that is used to create multiple objects of the same object type. So let's say I create a function. So this is how you write a function. Basically, you put function keyword and you put the name of the function. Let me put it once again. So function, and then so you put function keyword, and then you can say the name of the function, and then you put the round brackets, and then you open and close curly braces, and inside of this you can write the whatever you want to write inside of this function, whatever it does basically. Okay, so it can take different parameters. Okay, so parameter, it can take any number of parameters. So let's say I want to give it the first val name val, last name val, age val, I val. Okay, these are different parameters that it accepts, and then there is something called this keyword. Okay, and this is the thing called this is the object that owns the JavaScript code. So this dot first name val is equal to, and then you can write, in fact, first name, not first name val. This dot first name is equal to whatever this value is. Similarly, this dot last name is equal to last name val, and this dot age val is equal to age val. Similarly, this dot I color is equal to I, in fact this should be I color val. So basically what we're doing is we are defining the properties for this particular constructor method, okay, and then we are assigning the values whatever we get in form of parameters. So if we want to create an object, we can say let, and you can say my father is equal to, there's a keyword called new that you need to use, and then whatever the name of the constructor method is, you put that. So call the constructor method, and then whatever these parameters asking for, you're going to put that. So whatever you put as the first parameter will be replaced by this. So you can say John, and then last name can be Doe, and then age wall can be 50, and then the eye color can be blue. Okay, that's how you created the object. Okay, so it says that it gives me an error saying that a constructor method should actually be starting with a capital letter. Okay, possibly, so that's why it is suggested to use the capital letter, so we'll use that. Okay, and then if you want to console my father, see what happens. What do you expect to happen? So what will happen is that this will be instantiated when this constructor method is used to create a new object. So this is going to create a new object. Assign the first name property to John, last name to Doe, because that's what's being passed as the parameter, and then age will be 50, and then eye color will be blue. Okay, let's see that if that happens. Refresh, and there you go. So you have your first name is John. So what just happened is that when we created that object, this parameter was passed into this function when this function was called, and then the first name was set as John, the last name that was set as Doe, because that's what's been passed to the second parameter, and then age was passed, age val was passed as 50, that's what's been replaced over here, and then the eye color, okay, spelling is incorrect, eye color becomes eye color wall, right? Okay. Now I'm just going to print it over here. Okay, that's fine. Now similarly, we can create another object as well using the same constructor method. So if I want to say that I want to create mother, so I can say let my mother is equal to new. Again, I can use the same constructor function, okay, and then I can now say Samantha Smith, age can be 48, let's say, and then color, eye color can be green. Okay, and now if I print my mother, let's not print it here, let's do it, all of this in the console itself. Okay, so if I print my father, I get this. If I print my mother, I get this, which means that we have really saved our work, because if we know that we're going to go ahead and have the same kind of properties for both of these objects, rather than creating them separately, I can just create a constructor method, and then I can just pass these values whatever it needs. Now the question comes that what happens when we want to add another property to it? What happens then? Well, maybe this particular object might need an extra value, but this doesn't. Well, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is just say my father, like we've been doing earlier, and let's say I want to create another property. Let's say what would that be? A first name, last name, age, eye color, weight, and I can assign the weight as, let's say, 60. And now if I check my father, you can now see it has weight, but if I check my mother, it will still be the same, which means there's no change in that. And that's pretty cool, because I can now add any property to this object while this can stay the way it is. It has got nothing to do with it, which means both are using the same constructor methods but can actually share common properties and then extend it further to have more properties as well. You can also pass a method as well. So I can say this dot say hello is equal to, and then I can use function, and you can also pass a parameter. So you can say name, and then I can just say alert, or I can just do console warn my name is plus to concatenate, as we learned this. Okay, now if I say, first let's just print my father, what do we get? Well, we get the first name, last name, age, eye color, we get the weight, and we also get the function. If I hover over it, you can see what it does, right? So all I have to do is just call this method. So how do we call it? Say my father dot say hello, and then the round brackets, and there you go. My name is undefined. Why is it undefined? Is because we didn't pass the variable name, right? So all we have to do is just do the same thing again, but this time it asks for a name, right? So all we have to do is just put a name. Now, the name can be string, it could be integer, whatever you want to do. It doesn't specify that. So let's just put name. So my name is Imran. Put that there, hit enter, and there you go. It says my name is Imran. Of course, there's no space, but we can put that. Refresh again. My father dot say hello, and put Imran. Okay, awesome. So you can see, or this should actually be hello. Okay, my father dot say hello, Imran. There you go, hello Imran. Awesome. That works. So you can see how simple it is. So constructors are really useful for us because it can save a lot of work. And tomorrow, if I want to just go and check what are the properties and methods that are defined, you can easily use it. You can extend them as well, like I just showed you. So they are absolutely brilliant. Okay, now let's talk about the this keyword that I promised you I'll tell you about. So in JavaScript, this basically is the object that owns the JavaScript code. So let's say I'm going to console log this over here and see what we get. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this for now. And let's go back. Now, the value of this when used inside of a function is the object that owns that function. So when the value of this when used in an object is the object itself. Okay, and this keyword is in an object constructor does not have a value. It's just only a substitute of the new object. Okay, so it's a substitute of this object basically. The value of this will become a new object when the constructor is used to create an object. Okay, so if you notice over here that when we actually created this new object, then this became the new object. Okay, so that's why when we printed this, you can see that it's actually the new object is whatever we created over there. Okay, awesome. I know this is really confusing, but that's why when the ES6 came in, when we had the arrow function, the confusion of this got resolved. So you will learn about the ES6 later on. Okay, awesome. Now there are some built-in constructor methods as well in JavaScript. If you want to go ahead and create object, there is one called new object. So you can use object constructor. Okay, similarly you have string to create a string. Then you have number. You also have boolean. You have array, so you can create an array using the array constructor method. Okay, you have regular expression, you have function as well, so you can create a function using the constructor method function. And then you also have the date. Right? Now you must be wondering that sometimes we are calling a function and sometimes we are calling it a method. So what does that mean? It's so confusing, isn't it? Well, if there is a function which is inside of an object, it becomes the method of that object. However, if we just write a normal function outside of the object, then it's just a function. Okay? Say hello. Or say hi. So how do we, so we define this function, we just console log hi. Okay, so we can call this directly like this, and it with console hi. However, if I want to call, say hello, so let's say for this particular object, we'll say my father dot say hello. So you have to access its method using the dot operator. You put the object name dot the method name. However, if there's just function which is defined outside or like this, then you can just call the function directly. Okay, so that's the difference. So just to recap, a function which is defined inside of an object, it's the method of that object. Okay, otherwise just a function. Now there's one thing I want to clarify about these that we just discussed, is that there is no need for you to create these complex objects. Primitive values execute much faster. So for example, instead of writing let my array is equal to new array, you can just write let some my array is equal to, so it will be the same thing. I mean, you can put it like that, and then use this square brackets. It's the same equivalent for this. Similarly, you can also use it for instead of writing like new function, you can just write like this. It'll be the same. Okay, and for objects as well, if you want to define any object, let my obj is equal to, so instead of writing like new object, you can just write like this. It's the same thing. Okay, this is just to tell you this is how it existed. So there are different ways to write it, but like I said, primitive values execute much faster, so it's best to write it in the short forms. Okay, the shorthands. Awesome. Coming back to symbols, I think that's what we skipped earlier on. So we're going to go ahead and do the symbols now. So for symbols, symbols are unique, unchangeable values and used for naming custom properties to avoid it being overwritten. So let's say we create an object called student, and then curly braces, and then we put name, and then we give it an age. Say 30. We create this object, and then we define is active is equal to symbol. So in order for you to define a symbol, you use like this. Okay, and then if you want to check student, and if you want to check is active, in fact you can set it like this. So if you want to set a property of is active for this particular student object, you can set it like this. Instead of using dot, you use the square brackets, and then you can set value true. And now if you print student, you can now see you've got a symbol that's true. So in order for you to access symbol, basically you need to use the square brackets like this instead of using dot. I haven't personally used symbols a lot, so this is just to let you know it exists. If you ever have to use it, then you can certainly use it.